Hi, welcome back to Jonesy Chats Wrestling. Thank you for clicking the video. This video, interesting one of the different ones to the channel. This is one of my retro rewind interviews. I did this interview back in October 2012 with this man standing right behind me on the left, none other than former WWF Tag Team and Hardcore Champion, Head Banger Thrasher. I hope you enjoy it. It's the audio only. Some of the stuff we discuss is Monday Night Raw 1993, memories of a match in 91 against Ric Flair, thoughts of Jim Cornette, how did they find out they were going to win the World Tag Team titles in your house, and loads of other stuff, including GTV. If you want more stuff like this, some of this retro content, please give us a thumbs up and please like the video. And a special thanks and mention goes out to Head Banger Thrasher that did give me the time to do the interview. I hope you enjoy it, guys. Check it out.
Fantastic guest. None other than former WWE Tag Team Champion, NWA Tag Team Champion, and even the Hardcore Champion at one point. None other than Thrasher of the Headbangers. Thrasher, how are you this evening? It's great for you to join me.
I'm doing great. It's good to be here.
How's your day been today?
My day's been good. We're actually in southern Florida right now. We're preparing for a hurricane that is coming through tonight and tomorrow. So a little bit busy getting everything together. Kids, it's funny down south when you live in southern Florida is they don't have too many snow days. They have hurricane days. We're from the, north, from New Jersey and stuff like that. And, it's just funny that when the kids, they had a half a day of school today and they already called off school for tomorrow. So,
God, it sounds like they got it easy. We do appreciate you sort of coming on to the show in such sort of bad circumstances. What we are going to do tonight, we are going to cover sort of your career. And there you go. There's a dog, and it's not from the kennel of match either. So there you go.
I actually have 3 dogs, and they're Doberman Pinschers, and they're very loud. So,
no, that's all right.
Hear that? Bear with me. Nobody's breaking in or anything else.
What we are going to do tonight, we are going to cover your career in some sort of detail. I have got a lot of questions that I think that maybe you haven't been asked before, and I do appreciate you coming on to give me the chance to ask them. My first sort of question for you was you a wrestling fan growing up as a youngster?
It was funny, growing up, back when I was, I guess, younger and stuff like that, I lived in South Jersey, and there was a place in South Philly called the Spectrum. And what they did there is they did matches at the Spectrum once a month, and it used to show on local cable TV, and it was called Prism TV. And, I would go over to my aunt's house because, I was too, I wasn't, gracious enough to have that network. So I used to go over to my aunt's house every, once a month on a Saturday, and I used to watch, it was called Spectrum Wrestling on Prism. And, I occasionally watched it. I played football, from the time I was 7 years old all the way up through high school. And so I was always into athletics. And, I wrestled in high school my freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year in high school. I wrestled it, there. And I got really interested in wrestling. The high school wrestling it's a great sport for young kids and stuff like that. It's very disciplined. And one day, my senior year, I got a postcard in the mail. It was from Pretty Boy Larry Sharp, who runs a pro wrestling school in South Jersey called the Monster Factory. And he was inviting me for a free tryout. So I was like, wow, that's pretty different. And lo and behold, a week after I got that postcard, I had a high school wrestling tournament in the same city as the Monster Factory was. So during one of our breaks and everything else, I would go out and I would try to find the school, and I eventually found it. And I was looking in the windows, and he had all the wrestling cards up on the windows and stuff like that. And it always piqued my interest. So I wasn't a huge fan to the point where I had wrestling T-shirts or anything like that, or for that most the action figures and anything. I would call myself an occasional fan. And then once I graduated high school and stuff like that, back then the computer business was a big deal. So I went into the computer field where I was working 7 at night to 9 o'clock in the morning. And it was I was 19, 20 years old, and working those hours just weren't, very good for your social life.
That's understandable. What I would say as well is, what was the Monster Factory like? Was there anybody else sort of training with you when you broke in? Was it sort of, or was it just generally Larry Sharp, and then you sort of, I know you went on to become the assistant trainer. How did that sort of come about?
Actually, when I first started down there at the Monster Factory, the Pit Bulls were just leaving. Chris Candido was down there at the time when I went down. There was a guy named Ray Odyssey, stuff like that. I went. It's funny, the story leading up to it. It's actually funny. So, I go and I look at the school, and I was always like, did the computer thing, didn't like it. So I said, let me call this school up. It's in the center console of my wallet. So as I was saying, I called the school, and he would answer the phone the same way every single time. He would pick up the phone and go, "This is Larry Sharp, and you're calling the Monster Factory." And he would do it in such a voice that it would scare the living shit out of me. So every single time I would call, I would hurry up and hang up because it was just so intimidating and everything else. So eventually I had enough courage to stay on the line. I eventually went down there for a tryout. Now I walk into this little tiny, it looked like it used to be an old deli where they serve like sandwiches and whatnot. So I walk into this building, and there's TV cameras everywhere. So I'm like, right away, it was Australian TV. They were in there doing a spot for Larry Sharp and the Monster Factory and stuff like that. And I was just blown away by the production of everything. It was something that was just like, it took you back. It was like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I get in the ring, and he takes you through a tryout, which basically a tryout is they should teach you how to fall properly without knocking yourself out, without injuring yourself and everything else. Now, mind you, at the time, I just got done high school wrestling about 6 months to 9 months before that. So I was about 180 pounds. And back then in the early 90s, if you remember, that's when they had all Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, Hogan was at his peak. All these guys were just huge, giant guys. So I'm 180 pounds. What am I going to do? So after the tryout I went into the office, and I sat down, and I talked to Larry Sharp, and I said, listen to him. He goes, kid, within 6 months, I can make you somebody in this business. And I went, that's great. I thought it was a line. So I told him, I said, hey, let me gain some weight, and I'll come back when I'm over 200 pounds. He looked at me dead in the face, and he said, kid, it's a lot easier teaching you how to do all these flips and jumps and everything else at 180 pounds than it is 220.
Yeah.
That made so much sense to me. I think I tried out on a Friday. I started that next Monday. And within 6 months of my training, I went to Japan for Baba at the time when he was there before he passed, and wrestled for Japan. My first trip to Japan was 6 months in the business.
I think sort of looking into it, you then went on to sort of be the trainer, and you trained such people as sort of the Big Show and Dino Brown. What are your sort of memories of training them people now and looking where they are, particularly the Big Show? You must sort of laugh and sort of look at it and think, wow, how the hell did he end up there as such?
It's so funny. The D'Lo story is what Larry Sharp would do down at the school. He would, when we weren't in there training, he would send out invites to these guys that used to do, wrestling. So D'Lo Brown and a bunch of his friends came into the school, wanted to rent the wrestling ring for an afternoon. So Larry charged him some price to do it. D'Lo and his friends, they put on this full production wrestling match where they taped it, and then they put it on YouTube at the time and stuff like that. And, they had belts, they had ring entrances, they had everything. So, after a couple of times of these guys actually doing it, because they did it more than once, D'Lo and a bunch of his buddies, is I pulled D'Lo aside and I was like, listen, you're already halfway there with your training and stuff like that. Why don't you let me talk to Larry, see if I could get you a discounted rate to join the Monster Factory so we can, give you some polish and, see if you can make a career out of this, because he had so much potential. And, lo and behold, the story writes itself. I got him in and everything else, and he became to be, before he was D'Lo Brown, he was AC Connor.
Yeah.
So, and the Big Show story was, I don't know if a lot of people know about it or anything else, but when Big Show first started, he was probably about 325 to 350 pounds. He was so agile for being 7'2".
Yeah, I think the thing with the Big Show is he's always so much larger than life, and he was always going to sort of get that push based on his size. What you then was doing in between that, you was then obviously on enhancement talent. One of the classic stories I do have about you, Glenn, which I'm going to ask you about, is your classic match against Ric Flair on Superstars in 1991. What were your sort of memories against facing such a legend? And is there any sort of backstage stories from when you were there? What was your just general memories of that sort of time in WWF?
It's funny because at that time they were still doing, the WWF Superstars that, aired every Saturday morning and everything else. And what it was is you had an extra, or what they call now a job guy, that would go in against the Superstars just to get the living shit beat out of them. So, I never really wanted to do it, but I was always told that in this business, it's a lot easier beating somebody up and making it look believable than taking an ass whooping and making it look believable.
Yeah.
So Larry Sharp told me that. I was like, you know what? That's so true. Because, taking an ass whooping and making it look believable and having the fans, buy into it is another, it's something that, it's an art. So, I would constantly go up there and do these job matches and everything else. And, the one day I see my name up on the board against, Ric Flair. And it was right around when him and, Hogan wouldn't wrestle him or something like that for the heavyweight belt, or it was something with that
big
story.
Gold belt, wasn't it? The big gold belt, if I remember correctly.
Yes. So, I go out and, I told, Rick in the back, I said, whatever you want me to do, let me know and everything else. And he goes, just sell, kid, just sell, and, I know there's stories out there about Ric Flair and everything else about how he is and about what kind of person he is. But, frankly, I've, been around him, a couple of times and everything, and he's been nothing but an extreme professional, courteous, person that I know. So, we go out and we do the match, and he lit me up like there was no tomorrow. I mean, I had chops on my chest for a week straight. I would take a shower after the match, and the blood vessels on my chest would just explode because he welded me up so good. But a little story about after the match, you're asking about any backstage things. What the guys usually do is after the match, they go up to the guy and make sure everything was okay for him, to just make sure that, that what we did was sufficient enough for them because they are the superstars.
Yeah.
And he grabbed me by the hand. He took me over to Arnold Skolin, which, a lot of people know he was the money man in the back. And he looked at me and he said, kid, whatever they're paying you, they're not paying you enough. Ric Flair took out his draw for that TV and gave it to me, which was $200, but he gave me $200 for the match I gave him.
It's epic.
Just that time.
It's just epic to sort of think he would do that, and it's just sort of the type of guy he was. Another classic memory I do have of you, Glenn, moving slightly on, was the second Monday Night Raw. You faced Marty Jannety. How was that sort of going on to sort of live TV, to just sort of go in, just as it was a brand new product at the time? What were your sort of memories of that sort of match and sort of backstage during that time?
It was funny because, it was the first time that, the very first Monday Night Raw, what they did is they really had to get the program over. So I don't really remember if there was any kind of squash matches or extra matches on that show or anything else. So when we went up to do, it was great because they did that from the Manhattan Center in New York. I lived in South Jersey. My trans was pretty much non-existent. It didn't cost me a whole lot of money to get up there. So they would have us come up. I was at the very first Monday Night Raw. I remember it. That's why I was kind of upset I wasn't on the 1000th episode. That's another story.
Conspiracy, that's what it is.
So, it was actually the first, I guess, extra match that I had where Marty Jannety gave me a lot of offense and everything else. And, he was real easy to work with and everything. I think he was going back and forth with Shawn at the time for the Intercontinental belt. So it was neat. It was fun. It's funny because everybody always said, once you do these job matches, you'll never be anybody. You'll always have a title of a jobber and everything else. And, that's not necessarily true.
I sort of think, to be honest, some of the greatest jobbers have then gone on to sort of be stars. If you look at it, sort of the way that people start off. When, for example, John Cena started off, he was a jobber for sort of APW. Just look at it. Moving sort of forward, though, you then somehow or another met Jim Cornette in, I believe, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and that's where the whole Headbanger Gimmick was developed. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. We used to wrestle after, I trained Big Show and Chaz at the time, because I also trained Chaz. I was wrestling as a single wrestler called the Spider. Now, I got that name from Pretty Boy Larry Sharp because he always told me that I resembled, somebody's body type and everything else. And there was a wrestler before me named the Spider. I'm going to give you a little, see if you're good with your trivia. This guy before me played Major League Baseball for a farm team. And he used to moonlight during the off season as a wrestler.
Ah.
Do you know who it is?
Oh no, I really thought to you put me on the spot now.
See?
Put me up, go on, I'll hold my hands up.
I didn't know until he told me either. I was like, huh? It was Randy Macho Man Savage.
I knew, what a legend. That's just, you wouldn't believe it, would you?
His very well, he was in the farm team. He was in the AA or AAA team for the Cincinnati Reds. And, I didn't know that. And he used to, during the off season, wrestle. And he didn't want, I guess, his baseball guys to know what he was doing. So he would wrestle under the mask. And he called himself the Spider. Because back then, Randy was really skinny, lanky, and everything else. Being a baseball player, they're not really put together like Randy was. So when Larry Sharp saw my body type and everything else, he was like, you know what? You look an awful lot like Randy Savage did when he first started. To have somebody say that to you and to know where Randy,
ended up
and what he's done in this business and everything else, it was an extreme. I was like, all right, I'm the Spider.
I bet you were grabbing it with full hand.
So Larry Sharp would run these shows once a month and everything else, and he would always bring in, outside talent, and he would bring in, Jerry Lawler, Jim Cornette, Abdullah the Butcher, Stan Hand, he would bring in all these guys that he knew. So I got to be really good friends with Jim Cornette because he used to come in and he used to manage Chris Candido from time to time, and I got to know Jerry Lawler. And then I really wasn't, I wasn't comfortable going to, an outside, territory or stuff like that, like Smoky Mountain or, USWA. the Memphis with Jerry and stuff like that. So me and Chaz started tagging together, and we were the same way. You know, you would put the mask on us, and you couldn't tell us apart. I mean, you couldn't tell us apart so much that my mother would actually go up to him from time to time and start having conversations with him about different things that happened at home and everything else, and he would be like, "You know, listen, your son's over there, not here."
What I meant to... Sorry, go on. Carry on, sorry.
And so once we started tag teaming, we started building up. You know, we got to understanding the theory behind tag team wrestling and stuff like that. You know, I contacted Jerry Lawler, and Chaz was maybe in the business 3, maybe 4 months before we went down to USWA for Jerry Lawler, and we wrestled down there for quite a bit of time, you know, for Jerry. And then we went on, we wrestled for Burt Prentice out in Arkansas.
Yeah.
And then we met up with Jim Cornette, and, you know, we were working our way, I guess, back through Tennessee. You know, and that was the great thing about the wrestling back then. You had a territory where you could go and wrestle, you know, 4, 5, 6 times a night or 6 times a week, you know, and you could hone your craft. You could get better at, you know, your gimmick. You could get better at your promos and everything else. So Jim, when we contacted Jim and everything else, he was like, you know, I would love to bring you guys in, but I just absolutely hate the masks. God. So we got to lose the masks. All right, Jim, whatever you want us to do. He goes, listen, the other day I was at this rock concert, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the band Danzig. It's a heavy metal group and stuff like that. Well, he knows Glenn Danzig, who is part of the group and stuff like that. He goes, I was at this concert and everything else. He goes, and I saw all these guys. They had these tattoos all over them, these piercings all over them. They were doing all this stage diving and this mosh pitting and all this. And he goes, and I thought of you two. Because, you know, when we were the Spiders, I still had all my piercings. You know, I still had all the tattoos. You know, and then when he gave us the concept of it and everything else, we took it and we ran with it. Jim Cornette wanted us to be a little bit over the top with it, to the point where he wanted us to stop and pick up roadkill, which are animals that got run over. Yeah. And he used to want us to drag them to the ring.
Oh my God.
We drew the line at that one. We thought that was, you know, crossing a line somewhere.
Yeah, just a bit sort of macabre, innit?
So
what also happened is, along that time, from what I understand, you had a tryout at WCW. Is that correct? Can you tell me sort of what led to that and what happened?
Before I got really full-blown into the tag team wrestling, oh, that's my mother. Before I got into the tag team wrestling, I did have a tryout with WCW over at the old Philadelphia Civic Center. I, you know, went over, I had a match. You know, I really didn't hear much after that, but, you know, they were interested. But, you know, at the time, I wasn't, you know, I knew that I still wasn't where I needed to. I wasn't on that level with those guys. You know, with the Lex Luger, the you know, the Steiner brothers were there at the time. You know, Ric Flair, you know, all these guys were at WCW at the time, and I just knew I wasn't at that level of where I needed to be. So I really didn't pursue it, you know, after the tryout, probably, you know, like most people would have. I just know I needed to go someplace where I could wrestle, you know, 4, 5, 6 times a week to get better, to, you know, experience, you know, everything that needed to be experienced with, you know, coming up through the grapevine, you know, earning my spot. You know, all these guys, you know, back then, they earned their spot. You know, it wasn't, you know, they didn't look a certain way or anything else, and they were just given something. You know, they went through the $40, $30 payoffs a night, you know, either in, Smoky Mountain or USWA or someplace like that. They had to earn their right to be where they were. And, I wasn't nearly that close to being there. So, I chose to, tag team with Chaz and go down to USWA and do all that. And then once, we got with Jim Cornette, everybody has stories about Jim Cornette, regardless of what they are. But my experience with Jim Cornette, he is, love it or hate it, he will be as brutally honest with you as humanly possible. Sometimes you might not like it. Sometimes it's exactly what you want to hear. He's never lied to us, told us an untruth. He's never, made a promise to us that he didn't deliver on. When we won the tag team belts in Louisville, Kentucky, Jim Cornette, we had no idea what was going on with the match. He took us, he grabbed us, he goes, "Come here, guys, I need to talk to you." And we're like, holy shit, what do we do now? He grabbed us by the hands. He took us down into the parking garage at the Louisville Gardens, and he goes, "Guys, you guys will be the WWF Tag Team Champs after tonight." He goes, "I wanted to tell you guys," he goes, "because I feel responsible for, bringing you here." And he gave us our chance with WWF. He, gave us the chance to become the Headbangers. So he took us down there, and we're like, "Oh, really? Cool." And he's like, "Guys, I brought you down here so you could jump around and act like complete idiots in front of me instead of everybody else." So we're like, "All right, well, we're going to do it." So we're like, woo!
Yeah, you were going for it. What I would say as well is, what was your sort of first memories of when you came in as the Flying Nuns? You were associated with Brother Love. What were your sort of memories during that time, and who pitched the idea for you guys to have that gimmick?
It's funny because, at the time that we came in, a lot of people, I guess, don't realize that we came in as the Headbangers. And we came in at the time where Smoky Mountain was closing down. So Jim Cornette was trying to get, as much of this talent that he had from Smoky Mountain up there. And that's when WWF was going to the part-time contracts.
Yeah.
So we came up for a tryout. Here, Shane McMahon back then, was a huge Marilyn Manson fan. And, we I guess, revolved our gimmick into, wearing the skirts because we saw Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses. He was up on the stage wearing a skirt. We were like, that's pretty cool. He doesn't care what anybody thinks. He's being himself. And so we were, we upgraded to the skirts and, stuff like that. And, we did our tryout and everybody loved it. So we got signed to a part-time contract, which our contract was, we went and we did TVs every week and we got a certain amount of money. And that's when they had, TL Hopper.
Yeah, the Goon, who...
Fear, the Goon.
Yeah, they were all there. It's all synonymous, weren't they, with that time?
Say it again?
They were all synonymous with that period of dark WWF where we sort of try and forget about. If you look at sort of about it as well during that time, eventually sort of you did make it on to WrestleMania 13. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you a couple of questions just about that, if that's okay. Can I just ask you, what was it like sort of on that day? Was it any different to any other show for you? And what was the sort of atmosphere backstage? And what did you think of your match?
For WrestleMania 13?
Yeah.
It was weird because we weren't even under full-time contracts for WrestleMania 13. We signed our, the part-time contracts in November, and WrestleMania, of course, I think it was April back then. So we were only with the company maybe 6 months.
Yeah, to get to WrestleMania was huge.
We got into WrestleMania and we're sitting there when we're going over the match, and we were just excited to be in the whole thing of WrestleMania. That's back still when they did the Slammy Awards, you know, right before WrestleMania, and you know they had all they had talent shows and stuff like. They had, you know, it wasn't, you know, they didn't have like the fan fest like they do now, but they had a different version of it back then, you know, and we just went, you know, to say the least, we went balls to the wall. We were doing everything and anything. They were asking guys to do the fashion show. We raised our hand. We're like, we're in. We'll do the fashion show. You know, we'll whatever you want us to do, we'll do it. We don't care. We wanted to, you know, to say that we were in awe would probably be an understatement. It was probably the, you know, next to winning the tag team belts, probably my second most fond memory ever in the wrestling business that I have to this day.
What I would say is even better is you actually went and won your match at WrestleMania. That was your first match and you got a victory. I'm just going to ask your thoughts of a couple of the wrestlers that were in that match with you. What was your thoughts of the new Blackjacks tag team that were in that match?
I was scared to death of them.
Yeah, no.
You know, just Bradshaw himself. I mean, he is just, you know, and to see how he progressed and what he's turned into, I mean, says a lot for him. You know, he was, back then, that's when he was with Barry Windham.
Yeah.
And just to wrestle, you know, with Barry Windham and, you know, the name, the Blackjacks, is legendary. And they were so intimidating with their black caps on and stuff like that. And, you know, it was definitely, you know, that whole match, there wasn't one tag team in there, that match, that we were like not in awe of, you know, because you had the Blackjacks, you had Doug,
and you also had Furnace and LaFon. What were your sort of memories of the other two teams, the Godwins and Furnace and LaFon?
You know, Doug and Phil, they were probably one of the ones that we knew maybe the least about, but when we did our initial match with WWE after coming from Smoky Mountain, it was with Doug and Phil. They're the ones that gave, I guess, put us up for a tryout match. So we had a match with them, and, you know, those guys are legends in Japan. I mean, they are just huge. You know, so we knew of their work, but we didn't know a great deal about them because, you know, for years and years, they were just icons over there. They were, you know, tag team wrestling in Japan. So, you know, to be in the ring with them and stuff like that, it was neat. I mean, to say the least, you know, I know neat's not really a great word, but, you know, it was something like, oh my God, these guys are it in Japan. And, you know, at that time they were getting a huge push. And, you know, the Godwins, I mean, what more do you have to say about them? I mean, you know, Phineas and Henry, you know, we became extremely close to them. It was so much fun, you know, doing all the stuff that we did with, you know, Phineas and Henry. It was, there wasn't a time in that match the whole time that, you know, we weren't mesmerized and blown away, and starstruck is a good word.
No, it's understandable, really. What was sort of Vince McMahon like backstage? Was he stressed out, or was he just approachable during that event?
You know, what's funny is a lot of people, you know, I guess you have to know Vince to know him. He is probably one of the biggest, as we call, ribbers in this business.
Yeah.
He's got a very dry sense of humor, so a lot of people don't know how to take him. I've never, ever had a bad experience with Vince. Never felt intimidated to go up and talk to him. He was very, you know, approachable. I mean, for us, you know, he was a good guy. I mean, here's a guy running a multi-billion-dollar company that puts himself out there week after week after week for the entertainment value, which is just phenomenal.
Yeah, what I was going to say to you as well is, was there any other changes of sort of match plans during that, or was that literally you turned up at that show and you were just dumped straight in there? How soon did you know that you were going to be on a WrestleMania card? What sort of led to that sort of match?
Well, we knew for quite a while that we were going to be in a WrestleMania match. So, hold on one second.
No, that's fine. I was going to say, what sort of, in your sort of opinion, you obviously knew you were going to be there. Was you always penciled in to work with the other 3 tag teams, or was you going to be sort of in a feud with someone else at that point?
At WrestleMania?
13, yeah. I just wondered, was you...
Yeah, we just knew it was going to be a 4 corners elimination tag team match, and then the winners were going to get a shot at the tag team titles the very next day on Raw.
Yeah.
So, like I said, at the time, we weren't even full-time employees. We were still under part-time contracts. We had a huge head of steam because of, at that particular time, I guess, what the Headbangers really stood for. It's funny because everybody goes, is that really, you guys really listen? We really listen to heavy metal music. I could tell you stories that would probably put me in jail. But, we were really, that's who we are. We're fun. We don't care what people think. I guess it was an overwhelming accomplishment to just make it there, because there's hundreds and thousands of people that go through a career that never, ever get to be on that kind of stage. So we were, blessed, I guess you could say. We were grateful for the opportunity that we had. And, and then when we were wrestling for, as you were saying, the tag belts at Ground Zero, we still had no idea that we were winning the belts until, of course, Jim Cornette took us downstairs and, we did all that hoopla and stuff like that. Just to know that we were in, LOD was in that match. Henry and Phineas were in that match with us, and so was Davey and Owen. And when we found out that it was just coming down to us and Davey and Owen, we were just beside ourselves. It was one of those moments that, it's extremely hard to express the feelings, the emotions that are going through you. It's almost like you're in disbelief that, something like that actually happened to you. Because, you see them all the time, and, it's just something that you can't put a finger on. It's so hard to explain, but it was such, at the time, an honor. We were extremely overwhelmed by, the fact that we were chosen to, carry the championship belts, whether it been for a day, 30 days, whatever. It was still the fact that, that we were thought enough of in the company to be called their tag team champions. It's an honor, to be honest. If you look at who was in that match with you, what I would say as well is, what was your sort of opinion backstage of how it went, how that sort of backstage, how the momentum was? What were the people's reaction to you winning the title belts? I know did you get any sort of heat from the locker room? Was everyone sort of pretty behind you now because you sort of had got your foot in the door permanently now? Yeah, it was funny because, like before, I guess, matches before that and everything else, we got to be real close friends with Bret Hart. And, we would talk to him about different things and matches and stuff like that, and, how to do certain things, how to get certain things over. So Bret would sit us down, talk to us, and say, instead of, doing the old comeback where you're slamming your foot on the apron and pounding on the turnbuckle and stuff like that, try to invest yourself emotionally into the match and show the people that you're caring what's happening to your partner, and then they'll get behind you.
What I was going to say is, that's an interesting segue leading on to it. With Bret Hart, what was your opinion of the cameras backstage of Wrestling Without Shadows during the filming of that? How did sort of people react to having a camera sort of exposing backstage? I think sort of a lot of the stuff I read was just generally people weren't happy about that. How did you think it portrayed the wrestling business, in your opinion?
You know what's funny is back then, there wasn't, everybody knew what their role was in the company, regardless of who you were and stuff like that. And, everybody knew their place. I don't want to say that there was no, undermined stuff going on and stuff like that, but everybody knew what their job was. Everybody knew what their role was. So, to have the cameras backstage and stuff like that and everything else, if Vince said, hey, that's how it was going to be, hey, that's your boss. That's how it's going to be.
Yeah, no, that's true.
It's absolutely no different than working at McDonald's and your boss telling you, hey, go sweep the parking lot. Yeah. You're going to go sweep the parking lot. That's who's paying you.
What I would say as well is, what were your thoughts of the most controversial angles ever in terms of the Montreal screw job? Clearly, for both sides, I could say that sort of Vince McMahon didn't want Bret Hart to do an Alundra Blaze with the title. Clearly, that's the counter argument. What do you sort of think? Who was right, Bret or Vince, or was the whole thing a work?
I don't think there was anybody that was right or won that or anything else. I understand both sides. I understand where Vince was coming from with trying to protect his company because, as much as Bret said, hey, I would never do that and everything else, and I believe Bret would never have done what Alundra Blaze did.
Yeah.
But Vince still had to protect his company, and his company was that world title belt. That world title belt back then meant everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything. Whoever had that around their waist was bigger than anybody. I mean, was it. And just to have that happen, I understood how Bret felt and everything else, that, he didn't want to go out that way. He wanted to go out as the champ and then turn it over to Vince. And I understand that, and I think with Bret and everything that he did with Vince and everything else, had every right to X for that to happen. But in the same turn, Vince had every right to protect his business. And, a lot of people don't agree with it and everything else, but I don't think there was anybody that was right or wrong. It was an unfortunate thing that happened. Nobody came out a winner on that or anything else. There was a lot of feedback from a lot of guys that felt that, what Vince did was wrong and everything else. But after, Vince had a huge meeting that day after that and explained why he did what he did. And you know what? You could absolutely hate what Vince did and disagree with it and everything else. But, at the end of the day, he's the guy that's signing your paychecks.
No, that's true. Can I just ask you, from a backstage perspective, what was that day like for you, arriving at the arena and then going sort of after the event? Did you sort of have any inkling that was going to go down? How did the atmosphere of the locker room change from the start of the show to the end when the huge sort of reveal came out? Obviously, 5 or 6 people knew that was going to happen.
It was weird. I mean, it was like every other day.
Yeah.
That day. And then, we were one of the ones that, even though we weren't on that pay-per-view, we stayed and we watched the whole entire thing. I was sitting backstage and everything else, and I was as stunned as everybody else and had no idea what was going on as much as, people were watching on TV. And at that time, when that happened, you could feel... It was almost like the air was sucked out of, the locker room and everything else. Nobody had any idea what was going on. And everybody felt, I can't speak for everybody, but I felt, completely confused.
Shocked,
I guess.
Probably more than...
And I was taken back because, usually you understand what's going on and everything else, and you want everything to make sense. And everything else, and you're sitting there watching that, and I was baffled.
Yeah, no, it's understandable. What I would say as well, sort of moving on, obviously you were in the Royal Rumble 1998. Can I just ask you, sort of, what were your memories of the match, and how would you, if you can, you don't have to tell me, but how would you say, how does it work so well? Clearly, there's so many wrestlers in there. You all get different cues and stuff. How did they sort of work the Royal Rumble? Can you tell me, or how would you sort of remember exactly what to do and how you're coming in?
Well, you knew who you were following, because what they used to do is, I don't know if they still do it to this day. I don't know. But we had the 30 guys lined up in the back right behind the gorilla position. And, Jack Lanza, Tony Gurria, one of the guys were standing back there. Pat you on the back, say, go out, go out, go out. And then before that, they would have a meeting, tell you who you were following, who you were going out afterwards, who you were putting out and stuff like that. And then, back then we had the freedom of, I guess, artistic expression.
Yeah.
So we would go out and we would do the best job we possibly could.
What was there any original plans in the Rumble that sort of didn't happen, or anything that you thought would sort of, the way they were going? It looks like, as far as I can tell, they only were really working on the finish at the end. There was no real sort of planning throughout the whole lot. I know it was used to sort of further feuds. When you went in there, did you sort of, was it any different to any other match you'd been in as such, or was it just generally sort of just another day at the office, really?
A Royal Rumble match isn't like, any other match that you're in and stuff like that. You're not, running spots and stuff like that. It's punching, kicking. It's exhausting is what it is. Yeah. It is absolutely, because you're nonstop from the time you go in to the time you get thrown out.
Can I just ask you, sorry, this is going to be sort of a really upfront question. Before the Royal Rumble then, does sort of Vince have a team talk with the whole sort of 30 wrestlers, or are you all briefed individually to what's going to happen in the match?
Not really. He had agents that would pretty much, go over the match and stuff like that. And, if you had a big part in the Royal Rumble, the agent would pull you aside and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. If you had a small role, which we did, they say, all right, you have to leave, after this guy gets thrown out, about a minute after he does, have, this guy throw you out.
I'm just amazed by the timekeeping, how sort of, when you look at it at TV, how well it's worked. It's just done properly, really. And what I would say is, if you look at who eliminated you, it was none other than Stone Cold Steve Austin, which I think you can at least say that that's happened. You went out by somebody that's sort of at least done it, if that makes sense. What I would say as well is, moving sort of on, slightly after this, I might have missed this, you became the NWA Tag Team Champion as well. What sort of led to that and the title belt coming back into WWF? What were your opinion of it?
It was funny because if everybody remembers, that's when Jim Cornette was trying to do the NWA takeover.
Oh yeah, you had Billy Gunn and somebody else as the fake Midnight Express. Is that correct?
Right. Well, you had Bart, and then you had Bart Gunn, and you had Bob Holly.
Yeah.
They were the new Midnight Express and stuff like that, and of course Ricky and Robert were there. That's who we won the belts from, and eventually we lost it to Bob Holly and
you lost that second Bart Gunn. What I would say as well is clearly you then went into a program with the Quebecers. What were your sort of thoughts of wrestling somebody, particularly like the Mountie again so far on? It must have been a bit of a shock seeing somebody you sort of watched on TV growing up.
It was, and even Pierre. I mean, I remember watching him on TV when he was the pirate. He did the pirate gimmick, and so it was. I mean, it was. If you go to what I said before, these are all guys, tag teams that have history together. The Quebecers, history together. They threw the new Midnight Express together. But that name had history.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, I hate to say it, it's not like, the Kane and Daniel Bryant, Team No Hell or Team Hell No.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not going to be there 6 months from now.
Yeah. What I would say as well go on, sorry.
My question is how can fans today get emotionally invested in something that they know that's not going to be there 6 months from now. That's my biggest thing, I guess, about, the way certain things are going in the business now. Not that I don't like it, but times have changed. It's different now.
The tag team division's non-existent though in WWE. I agree with you. The fact that WWE at the moment, they're just stringing anybody together and there's no real continuity. The thing is, when you look at it, when you were in that division, you had the New Age Outlaws, you've had teams like the Dudley Boys, there's always partners on it, if that makes sense. So what you've sort of got is you've got the fact that the division, I can't see the WWE tag team division ever sort of being rebuilt, if I may ask you then. What I was going to ask you as well is, just sort of moving on as well, what was your sort of memories of the whole GTV angle? Because you seem to just randomly appear in a segment at some point to do with like Chaz.
That whole GTV angle was supposed to be. I was out with. I hurt my knee really bad. I had my ACL replaced, and then I also had to go back in for a second surgery to have my medial meniscus, which is the shock absorber between your knee joint. I had to have that removed. So we had to find a way that we could, I guess, bring me back into the picture that had some kind of sense. But it really never took off the way I guess they planned on it doing.
Can I just ask you, was the point of GTV Tom Green? That is correct, isn't it? It was going to be Tom Green eventually behind that. Because we never sort of did find out who was responsible for GTV. Did you ever get told?
It was supposed to be me.
Oh, okay. Okay, no, that's fine. What I will do, sort of moving on rapidly, we are going to go towards WrestleMania 2000 now, another one of your sort of great things you can put on your CV. What was your memory of the Hardcore Battle Royal, and how was that sort of organised? Clearly that was frantic, and it was just I've never seen a match sort of like that, where it's you got so many near falls in such a quick period of time. How did you sort of find out you were going to win the title temporarily?
Actually, once again, it's kind of set up the same way as the Royal Rumble. We're all sitting in the lunchroom. You have the agents telling you what's going on and everything else, and going, all right, well, you're going to get a fall here, you're going to pin him here, stuff like that. And, it's just put together that way. And then, like I said before, we had artistic expression back then where we could just go out and do what we do. And, go with what's right out there. You pick up the stuff that's around there, and I'll still never forget this day. Walking into that cloud of fire extinguisher smoke, and then lo and behold, getting hit in the head with it. Because I was like, I don't remember talking that one over.
No, that's true, man. It's good. What I was going to say, what was the backstage atmosphere like during that WrestleMania? Clearly, the company was on a high. How did it compare to WrestleMania 13 in terms of backstage action and people's moods and attitudes, would you say?
Back then, everybody was just so ecstatic to, what was going on, where we were going, how we were moving around and everything else. Everybody was just so happy to come to work. It was, when I think of the Attitude Era and stuff like that, I think of the best time in wrestling that I think that we'll ever see. I think all the guys, were there for the same reason. Back then, we were there, during the time where, it was us against WCW. Yeah. Every Tuesday, we would run over to the run-up sheet just to see what the ratings were, to see if we beat, Nitro, Monday Night Nitro. And, it was just a contest. What can we do this week to,
beat Nitro,
to beat them, in the ratings and stuff like that. And then every guy, when they were out there, wanted to outdo who was ever on Monday Nitro at that same time. So it was, like we were competing against them, and then we were also competing against the guys that we were going up with at the same time frame. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that does. What I was going to say to you, I'm just going to name a couple of names to you. I just like an honest, sort of couple of words about your opinions of working with them backstage and in the ring. Stone Cold Steve Austin will be the first one.
See, if I had to give him one word, he's real. He's genuine.
We'll do this sort of quick fire. What about The Rock as well?
backstage he was quiet.
Triple H?
Triple H, outstanding brain for this business. Extremely business smart.
Mankind?
Nuts.
Vince Russo is another one.
I think he was, at that time, I think he, had the mind for the business.
And finally, the last one on my list is Jim Ross.
Jim, a great announcer. I don't think there'll ever be another one remotely close to him.
And no, go on.
I consider him, a really good friend. He was another one that we could go and talk to. Him, Bruce, that we could just go and talk to, and they made you feel very comfortable to approach them at any time.
Yeah. What my last question for you tonight, sort of before I let you go, is what would you have done differently if you could during your period of time with WWE, WWF? If there's anything you could have changed, what would have you done?
Be more business smart, I guess. If I could change one thing, it was so much fun back then. It was almost like it wasn't work. You were out there and you were playing. You were playing wrestling. It was that enjoyable. It was almost like it was recess time at school. It was that much fun. If I could change one thing, I would probably, even like today, be more business oriented with it. And that's it. That's probably it. Maybe not say yes as much.
What I would say as well is, from what I understand, you are going to be filming a movie now. What are you still up to nowadays, apart from filming movies? And tell us about the movie you're going to be in. I'm quite excited to see you on the screen.
It's funny. We're actually, I got out of the business for about 12 years after I left WWF. I got out. I got into other, occupations. Got fed up with it and said, you know what? I can still do this. I was living in South Jersey. I recently just moved to South Florida about a year and 5 months ago. I got back in incredible shape. I'm in better shape now than I ever was. I weigh less now than I ever did when I was with WWF. And I still think that we have something to offer, the talent of today.
Yeah.
Just as an example, we're actually currently with Ring of Honor Wrestling. I don't know if you guys see that up over there in the UK.
We don't have syndication, but we can see it online if that's anything to do. Hopefully, eventually, it will sort of get its chance over here. I do know since you've been back with Ring of Honor, you had a match against the world's greatest tag team. Is that correct?
We were actually, I think it'll air this weekend, but I don't know when this will air. But we were actually the guys under the mask as the Guardians of Truth.
Oh, okay.
So we recently just took them off. It'll air this weekend on Ring of Honor. Spoiler alert. I am in the process of doing a movie, and it's going to be over in the UK. And what I'm asking everybody to do is to go to the Facebook page. It's called Rumba Rama, RHUMBLE, Rama, RAMA, and just like it. What it is, it's a movie based on a couple out-of-work actors that need to find a different way to create some money. So they get into wrestling, and they're going to come up against me, and right now it's Viscera.
Oh, excellent. That sounds sort of interesting. Is this going to be coming out nationally next year in 2013?
Actually, they're doing auditions for it. If anybody wants to audition for it, they can go to that Facebook page. They can like it. They can put their name in. They're doing auditions starting in January. Like I said, it is going to be filmed over in the UK, and the guy that's directing it, his name is Andrew Carson. He's also written it. He did the screenplay. He's producing it. And also Peter Caddick is also producing it. So it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. It's something new that I wanted to get into and stuff like that. So, we'll see what happens. Come January, they start doing all the auditions for it, and we get, together a group of actors, and then me and Vess will go over and kick the living shit out of them.
Sounds good, man. One last thing, sort of before you go, where can people contact you if they want to sort of speak to you or sort of your fans? Do you have anything to say to your fans before you go as well?
Everybody and anybody can reach me and Chaz Mosh on Twitter. My tag is at GR Thrasher, and Chaz's is at Chaz Mosh. We also have a website where you can get Headbanger gear. We actually, came out with 2 new T-shirts. Our one T-shirt is actually a throwback of our original WWF T-shirts, the one with our faces on it, and it says "Real Men Wear Skirts."
Sounds cool.
So you can go to www.wrestlingmarks.com, and you just click on the Headbanger icon, and it'll take you there. We have things for sale. It's called a mystery box. Ooh. We have large boxes and we have small boxes. You don't know what you're going to get until you get the box.
That's fine. That sounds good. What I would say as well is I do appreciate you sort of coming on the show tonight. Thank you for your time.
Oh, not a problem. Anytime.
One last thing before you go as well. Do you have any plans to go back into wrestling, or is it just film from now on? That's my last question to you tonight.
Actually, we are. You're going to see us on TV hopefully real soon. And I do have me and Mosh have a tour coming up over in the UK sometime in February. I think it's for it's a legend show over there. Outlaw Don Bass is supposed to be on there, or Ron Bass.
Ron Bass, yeah.
Among, with us and stuff like that. I don't have the particular date as of yet, but, keep looking us up on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook by our real names, Glenn Ruth or Chaz Warrington, and there's no question I won't answer.
No, that's true. I'd like to thank you for sort of coming on. Thank you for a fantastic interview.
Wow, that was a fun, nostalgic interview. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope you enjoyed the video as much as I enjoyed completing it. Special thanks to Head Banger Thrasher for taking the time to complete the interview. And most of all, special thanks to you for taking the time to watch and listen to the video. Now, please tell a friend about the channel. Make sure that all your friends that like wrestling know about our channel, and how they know where they can watch regular wrestling videos so they never miss any future videos, or you miss any future videos yourself, or so that they don't miss any wrestling breaking news that we cover. As always, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and follow the channel by the notifications and stuff like that. And as always, please leave a comment. It means so much to hear all your feedback, and we thank you so much. We'll talk again soon, so have a great week and stay safe. Thank you for watching.